Hello, my name is Antonio Girola. I'm in the formal organizations class on sports and business, and I'm going to be giving a presentation on why college athletes should be paid by their universities, colleges, and the overarching league, the NCAA. Now, being a college athlete, the first thing that comes to mind is a hardworking student that spends a lot of time both in the classroom and out of the classroom. It's essentially like working two full-time jobs. First, you're spending so much hours preparing for tests, writing essays, studying, taking down notes, but you're also spending a great deal of time to make sure that you're performing at the top of your athletic peak. They're required to spend a significant amount of time practicing, lifting, and missing class to compete. All of this while juggling academic requirements, and also part-time jobs that some of them have, as they can't afford to be in college without spending money unless they have a job. Now, if you look at this chart, it shows the average hours spent per week for an in-season Division I athlete in the NCAA. This is self-reported from Forbes, and if you look at baseball, it says about 42.1 hours a week. Men's basketball, 39.2 hours. D1 football, anywhere between 42 to 43 hours. And most other sports show at least 30 hours a week. And now, if you look at this amount of hours spent on this, on their sports, when compared to the average American worker who only works about 40 hours a week, you can see that a great deal of time is being devoted by these athletes without actually being compensated. So, I like to call being a student athlete a full-time job without the perks of actually having a job. Now, since college athletes are not considered employees, they lack a lot of the benefits awarded to a typical American worker. Specifically, if you break it down, they don't have access to workers' compensation or insurance benefits to support them if they're sick or injured on the job, quote unquote. Basically, if they're sick or injured while playing, they have no protections. They may lose their scholarship and not be able to actually graduate or attend the university, as they may not be able to afford it. They also don't have any form of collective bargaining power. They can't form a union. They can't form a players' association that can kind of negotiate league standards that are in their best interest, serving their dual function as an athlete and a student. And also, the NCAA and the universities can overwork them and force them into certain classes, majors, and attending events and requirements without them having a say. It's essentially like if a union worker is forced to go to work a certain amount of hours and can't argue what holidays they have off, how many hours a week their work week should be, and the company can kind of just dictate whatever they want. Now, the NCAA, in my opinion, is kind of taking advantage of the players. So, a part of the process of actually becoming an NCAA athlete requires that you sign certain forms and sign away certain rights. The NCAA requires that all student athletes waive any right they have to any form of compensation or sponsorship deals. They also sign away the rights to the use of their name, their image, and to any part of the revenue for merchandise sales. College athletes have no right to revenue sharing agreements in which, let's say you sell a jersey or a show on TV that includes that athlete, they can't actually make money off of it. Instead, the school and the university are the only ones that can. Now, a big argument against paying college athletes is this notion that the NCAA can't afford to pay their athletes, which is wholeheartedly false. Now, in fiscal year 2017, the NCAA boasted a revenue of about $1.3 billion, which is separate from any revenue that a school can make from television, and also the shares that schools can make off of merchandise sales, which the NCAA only gets a small part of. This year, the University of Alabama reported about $143.3 million in athletic revenues, which is more than all 30 of the NHL teams and about 25 of the 30 NBA teams. So now, this makes you think, if the NHL and the NBA are on similar revenue schemes, how can they afford to pay their players but college sports teams can't? Which means college sports teams can in fact play their athletes. They're just choosing to redirect the revenue elsewhere, which is unfair to the players, which are the ones that are ultimately making the sacrifices to put their best foot forward, train the most to make sure that their teams are at the top. And if you look at this chart, the chart on the left over here, and it says most valuable college conferences. The SEC revenue per school is about $36.8 million just on TV, with a total of about $515 million. Big Ten $431 million. Average revenue per school about $30 million. If you go down the chart, Big East, Mountain West, all these have at minimum a $2 million revenue in television revenue alone, of which can be directed towards the players. But currently the players aren't able to tap into any of this revenue. And if you look to the right, it compares March Madness with all of the other leagues postseason. Number one, NFL makes the most money in postseason, which is playoffs. But number two, ahead of the NBA, the MLB, and some other leagues, is March Madness for the NCAA basketball. They're making the second most revenue in the postseason based on advertisements out of any other league in America. Yet they refuse to share any of that revenue with their players who are, as I said before, making the sacrifices. If they're making more than all these other leagues, it is very, very conceivable that they can write a check to their players through stipends or salaries of some other sort to make sure that the players are being compensated for their hard work. And now, a lot of the large amounts of revenue collected from college athletics don't actually go back into the classroom to benefit the student athletes or other students at the college. Instead, what we've seen through trends and financial analysis is that a large share of these profits are actually being traded among a select few, the hands of a select few coaches, league administrators, athletic directors, and television companies that make money by buying the rights to these games. So in 2017, the average salary for bowl championship eligible football coach was about $2.05 million. NCAA D1 men's basketball coach, average salary, exceeded $1 million. University of Alabama's coach, Nick Saban's new contract will pay him over $7 million per year from this university. Yet again, there are no checks made out to these athletes that played their heart out on the field. And if you take this revenue scheme of if a team is making about $170 million or about $100 million, and the coach is making about $7 million, that's about 10% of the revenue. That is a ridiculous revenue to compensation ratio if you compare that to the private sector. If Microsoft's CEO made 10% of their revenue, he'd be making $6 billion a year. So there is so much emphasis by the NCAA and the colleges to pay coaches that they're skimping along their players. If they simply scale back coach salary and the coach salary to revenue ratio, there would be a great deal of money available to pay the student athletes. And so another big argument is the fact that if you look historically through the NCAA, compensation of any sort for anyone besides the college or the league has always come with a lot of resistance. In 1905, there was a large argument made against paying coaches. It was akin to the current argument against paying athletes, in which they said it was unsustainable, it would draw away money from the educational process, and it wasn't fair for coaches to be paid. But if you look now to the current way the NCAA does compensation and colleges do, coaches are being paid handsomely. They're making so much money, yet the school is still able to make money, the league is still able to make money, So if you look at this model and you transition that to the player model, if you share some of the wealth with players, the amount of revenue teams are making is still sustainable for them to continue to make a lot of money and be productive. So we should go in the same direction with athletes' compensation as the league did with coaches' compensation. And so this is the bibliography, and I just wanted to thank you for tuning in. And yeah.